Hello, and welcome to Whip.25, a podcast about design with a focus on a single project. We strive to go beyond the surface and understand the reasoning behind the designer's decisions. This podcast was created between the Masters in Communication Design at ISAD by the class of 2024-25. Enjoy listening! Hi,
Hello.
good morning. First of all, I wanted to thank you for accepting this invitation and for being so open with me. I feel so honored to have you because all of your projects are so interesting and so well done. My name is Maria Inácio. And your name is.
Hamish Muir.
So, can you please talk about how you approach design? Like, how you see design?
Okay, so I think to me, ways of designing are about avoiding having ideas because ideas are very difficult things to have, and when you have them, they're often disappointing when you try to make them. And I realized many years ago that I wasn't very good at ideas. So what I'm interested in is form, and especially typographic form. I like working with words. To me, I prefer working with type only and not working with images at all, for example. So, so it could be type as image, or it could be, I mean, you can think of type as image. I mean, it's a kind of a phrase, but I think I prefer type only. So, most of the work that I've done as part of New McNeil in the last 2 years has been exclusively typographic.
Wow.
Yeah. Always try and avoid images wherever possible.
And how did you create such a non-image?
Just because I'm fascinated by the power of words and the way that language works. And I think that one can, using typography, express many things which are perhaps more universal and kind of non-literal than using images. Images always have associations. They're very direct associations. They're representations. I mean, or you can have abstract images which kind of create a mood. But I'm kind of much more interested in typographic structure and the structure of language and how those two things can be synthesized.
I totally agree with you.
Okay, good.
I really also don't like images.
No. No.
When you said to work in black and white, I was like, no images.
Well, yes, I mean, and
It
restrictions
confused.
as well.
Yeah.
To me, the more restrictions one has to work within, the more interesting the work becomes, because it then becomes about an in-depth exploration of a particular form-solving problem. You know, you have to give form to something. It might be a poster or a record cover or a book cover or a book, indeed, you know, the whole typographic structure of a book. And typography is an extension of writing. And I think our job is to, as typographic designers, is to provide access to information in clear ways, first of all, depending upon the context. Sometimes it's only about clarity of communication, and other times it can be much more challenging in that Muir McNeil, the work that we do, we're very interested in the point where typographic form becomes almost unreadable. We're interested in exploring the limits of basically how much you can do with letter forms and sort of work with them in ways which are against legibility and all those sorts of things. It's still typography, but it's at the edge of reading.
It's beyond its use.
Yeah, and also I think it's very interesting because what people, well, the big thing about reading is that we don't read individual letters one at a time and then make a word and then move on and join a sentence together. We're used to the pattern in language, so redundancy is very important. So you can predict what's coming next. I mean, that's how we read efficiently. You know the structure of things, you know word shapes. If you see a particular combination of letters, you intuitively know that it's a fish or whatever. And so you can use all of those things, the power of the retention of language and reading, to really push things to a place where they're almost no longer letter forms and yet they're readable. And I just find that very interesting.
And with this, we're going to talk about one of your most recent projects, which is which approaches to this idea, right?
Yes, I suppose. Well, System Process Form is a book that Paul and I have developed over 5 years, working with Thames and Hudson and Unit Editions, and it's about a type system that we have initially started working on 15 years ago, but it's a live project. So in the last 2 years, we've formulated a kind of or brought together a kind of a visual catalogue of possible experimentations with this type system, which has got sort of the potential to create hybrid variants by combining things, different fonts from different parts of the system in layers. And because all of the typefaces in the two type system are based on the same kind of skeleton or armature, there's a lot of synergy between the various typefaces in fonts within the system. I think now there are 300 and something. And
Wow, there's so many fonts.
yeah,
300.
and also, I mean, if we're interested in combining them in layers to create hybrid kind of fonts, so we're using them as building blocks. And I think working in 2 layers, it produces 140,000 possible variants. And if you combine them in 3 layers, it's something crazy like 54 million
Wow.
potential new typefaces, which of course is impossible. But so the way that we work with these things is through a systematic kind of algorithmic approach where we play games and ask questions and ask a lot. One of the questions we keep asking is what if, and what if I do this now? You do something, you don't know what you're going to get, and it looks interesting, but maybe you get a sense about what you could do next to make it even more interesting or unpredictable. So it's a systematic approach to form giving or form making, which produces wildly various and weird and wonderful things which you don't know exist until you actually make them. So it's design not through ideas, but design through process, I suppose. And it's the notion of discovery rather than invention, which I think is something that runs through all of the work that we do. And for us, the interesting thing about that is it takes us, the designers, out of the design.
Yeah.
And the design, the things that we make have lives of their own. All we did was create the recipe to make them and then did the cooking, but it's the cooking process where things come together that, we're not responsible for that. That's, in this case, sort of optics and mechanics and other mathematics and other things.
So it's a software.
No, we're not really coders. We just think algorithmically. An algorithm is just a recipe, really. It's a routine for doing something. So we just think very systematically and very simply in terms of, how to combine things, I suppose, with certain mathematical offsets, which are to do with the grid on which the font is based, or all the typefaces are made from.
Yeah. And how did you how did this work? I already know that you had previously done the typographies, the typefaces, the fonts.
Yeah,
You already had some of them.
yeah.
How did you thought, let's put all in this in the book and make a catalog or like an official.
Yeah, well, it came out of the fact that the publishers wanted us to do a monograph about our studio, because we don't just make typefaces, we also, do commission work, and we tend to work with, whenever we can, with our typefaces. Not exclusively, but usually people come to us to ask for, something that we can do with the typefaces that we've generated. And we see those typefaces very much as building blocks. They're not sort of finished things. They're things that can be put together in different ways to make new things. And so we started work on the book as a kind of a catalogue of the output of the Muir McNeill studio. And it just got so boring, and so kind of like, well, A, who's going to be interested, and B, do we really want to do this? So we kind of turned it on its head and said, well, why don't we just make this book about the two-type system and catalogue it as a kind of a, here are all the typefaces, and this is what you can do with them. So the start of the book literally shows every single font in the entire systems as a kind of a catalogue. And then we go through a series of steps, different ways of combining typefaces from the system in two colors to create hybrids. And then it moves on to sort of more expressive and looser things, which are sometimes multiple layers in one color or 3 layers in 3 separate colors, so that when they overprint, you get all these secondary colors. So the book is printed in metallic black, neon pink, neon blue, and neon yellow. Colors which are sort of quite close to CMYK, but they're not. And when they combine, they produce these sort of very strange hybrid secondary colors. So in CMYK, if you overprint yellow, cyan, magenta, you get a kind of almost black color. I mean, that's the idea in a way. But with neon pink, yellow, and blue, you get this kind of deep aubergine color.
Yeah.
But it's still got a sense of neon about it. It's sort of this weird fluorescent neon brown, I suppose. And also for us, print is really important, print as technique, and working with the print process as part of the design process, knowing that we're using 3 amazingly high chroma colors, and when they combine, they produce these sort of weird variants, weird secondary and tertiary colors. So it's about revealing the way that things are made, because it's a product of overprinting 3 colors, and that's evident in the form and the color that you get out of it.
So your favorite color is the color that the layers did together?
Yeah, it kind of. I mean, it's a bit takes, it's not like the most tasteful color in the world, but it's certainly very interesting. Yeah.
And which of the typefaces is your favorite? When you say this is me?
Oh, none of them really.
None of them.
No. I mean, they're all sort of. I mean, it started with something really simple, like a thing called 2 Point, which was basically a 5x7 matrix based monospace typeface, as simple as you can get, like a very kind of simple, almost blocky bitmap typeface. And then that's the grid that all of the letter forms follow, but we find different ways of expressing weight and density and stroke modulation, and also texturing pattern in some of them. But so no, none of them are favorites. It's only what they make that
It looks
is interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, it's not the typefaces. They're just the means to an end.
It's their use, how they are used.
Yeah, indeed. So in and of themselves, they're not actually that interesting, really. And they're not necessarily intended to be, because they're meant to have a utility which allows them to be used in combination with, their brothers and sisters and cousins or whatever, to create these sort of, strange sort of combinations.
If you could change something,
What, in my life, or last 2 years, or
Mm,
in the world?
in the world,
Um,
probably, but
Well, there's one person we all know who
we all know who.
who wish didn't exist, but unfortunately does. But no, if I could, if I could change one thing of what?
In your work.
Oh gosh.
That's a difficult question.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it's all a work in progress. And despite the fact I've been, well, I've been working professionally for 40 years. I don't think I'm finished yet. And I'm interested in the next job and not the ones I've done. I think it's all about moving forward. And in some ways, it's like an incremental series of experiments. You don't take everything that you've learned and then use that when you start a new job, but you just hope that the next job that you work on is something which allows you to create something which hasn't been seen before, I suppose. So I don't think I'd change anything in particular. Yeah, I've done some terrible things and terrible jobs in my life, but everyone does.
We all have those days.
Yeah.
And could you tell me what kind of books have you been reading, or what book do you recommend?
Oh, about graphic design, none.
Or
So I'm currently reading a really interesting book about, it's called Stasi Land, and it's written by an Australian journalist called Anna Funder. You'd have to look that up to check I've got the name right. And she's interviewing people after a couple of years after the Berlin Wall came down, and victims of the Stasi regime, and also trying to talk to ex-Stasi officers, in the GDR, the secret police, the state police. And it's just unbelievable, the cruelty of that system and the way that, and it's just, it's an amazing book because it's written almost like a novel. So that's what I'm currently reading. And before that, I read a novel called Caledonian Road, and because my memory isn't great, I can't even remember the author's name.
I'll look it up.
You'll have to look it up, but that's, yes, one of my sons gave it to me for Christmas, and it's the best novel I've read in 20 years. It was really good because it's about kind of now, and about corruption and oligarchs and, money for honors and
That's interesting.
gun running and people trafficking and drugs and music, and but all seen through the eyes of this guy who's a bit too old to understand what's going on. He's younger than me, and he gets kind of sucked into this world and doesn't realize what's happening to him.
Oh no.
It kind of ends pretty badly. And very
Spoilers.
no spoilers.
Spoiler.
No, but it's a great book. Caledonian Road by
Yeah, I'll edit.
yeah.
What about music?
Music. Well, I like lots of different things. I'm not musical. I'm not a musician of any kind. So it depends what mood I'm in. I like a lot of world music. I listen to, stuff from, world music, especially, I mean, I like one of my favorite artists is Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, who's a Qawwali singer. He died a few years ago. I really love Ravi Shankar. I like classical music. I like indie music, and I tend to rely on my eldest son, who's got good musical taste, so he recommends stuff to me. He's my sort of here, Dad, listen to this person.
Oh.
So yeah. But I don't know. I go through phases of working to music and not. Sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it isn't. But yeah, and obviously Mio McNeil have recently done an album cover for Russell Haswell, who I really like his stuff, but I'm not sure it's meant to be music. It's sort of more challenging than that. It's kind of a bit like he's doing with music what we do with typography, I suppose. Wow. It's at the edge of
Experimental.
Yes, being bearable,
Bearable.
Yeah, sometimes, but deliberately so. So yeah, I've got a very wide range of musical tastes. Depends what mood I'm in.
And thank you so much.
That's a pleasure. Yeah, well, thank you for your questions. Maybe think about things slightly differently, which is always good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's opened my horizons. Even your work.
Thank you.
I got so amazed by it. I had to take pictures.
Yeah. Well, it was really just about working with other people with the same attitudes and,
True.
and working hard, taking it seriously, but also having a good time. And yeah. And really, mainly because there's nothing else that I can do. Yeah. Okay.
So much.
All right. Pleasure.